On Patreon, I do the videos that if I did in public, I'd be drawn and quartered, quite frankly. And this is one of them. This is about lesbians. Lesbians, well, I've met a few in my time. And one of the things that I've discovered only recently after thinking about it, because I mean, I've met so many lesbians over the years. I mean, that sounds a little weird, not for any particularly odd reason, but just because I've met a lot of lesbians over the years, probably because I've just lived longer. And because of it, I've gathered a few data points. I have a whole data set, if you will. And I've come to some interesting conclusions about lesbians, specifically two. Lesbians are either women who are afraid of men, or they kind of like hate men and or want to be men. That's the conclusion I've come to. Now, the women who fear men, notice difference between fear and hatred. The women who fear men or don't understand men, don't understand where they're coming from, they tend to be like the femme lesbians. Right? They're like very attractive, very feminine, but they just don't want to be with a guy because they don't fundamentally understand them. Because you see, in a very real sense, a woman's femininity is defined by the opposite, masculinity. A woman who is feminine attracts masculine men, men who are guys, aggressive men. But a woman who is feminine and yet doesn't really like men or in fact fears them, she's not going to want to be with men. And so she's going to gravitate to women, especially women who in a very real sense want to be men. That's typically butch lesbians. Yeah? I mean, butch lesbians, you've seen them. They have like short hair and they dress with very masculine clothing. And they're obviously women. They're not transsexuals or transvestites. No, they are women, but they act and approach life in a very masculine way. Those are the women that femme lesbians, the ones who are very feminine, the ones who are afraid of men and don't understand men, those are the kinds of women that femme lesbians are attracted to. Those butch women. And who are those butch women? Butch women are women who either hate men or want to be them. More often than not, they want to be them. They don't hate them, and many times they have like very good relationships with men, but they want to be them. They want to be a guy. Many of them wind up becoming transsexuals. Many, but not all of them, of course. I would say just a minority, but the point remains. These butch lesbians, they want to be a guy, or they perhaps hate men, but they hate men not because they fear them. Remember, hatred and fear are two different things. No, they hate men because they want to be like them. They want to be dominant. And they are like two, positive magnets. You ever had like two magnets that are both charged positively, right? They repel one another, yeah? Butch lesbians rather, are the exact same thing. They kind of like hate men because they want to be men and they don't want to be around men. And it's like this repellent kind of thing going on. Yeah, and so quite naturally, that's how you have these femme lesbians and these butch lesbians. They come together like peas in a pod, like positive and negative magnets attracting one another. That's how it works. And it's interesting, how can I put it, from a sociological point of view. I mean, as a guy, there isn't much that you can do about it with these two types of lesbians. I mean, do keep in mind, there are some lesbians who are sort of like curious about lesbianism, bi-curious, if you will. But they go through a lesbian phase when they're in college. No, I'm talking about the long-term lesbian. They are these two species. And as a guy, there is not much that you can do with them. See, because a butch lesbian, you're just not going to be attracted to her. You're going to be kind of like repelled by her. And so you're just not going to want to be with her. You're not going to find her physically attractive. Because, of course, she's mimicking the behaviors of a guy. And, of course, if you're a straight guy, you're just not going to be attracted to that. Right? You're going to be attracted to the femme lesbian. But the femme lesbian, she's going to run away from you. She will want nothing to do with you because she's afraid of you. So many of these femme lesbians, right, when they don't realize yet that they're lesbians, they're the ones who scream the loudest, rape, sexual assault, sexual harassment, blah, blah, blah. Because ultimately, they're afraid of men. And when men naturally give them attention, sexual attention, they freak out. They don't know how to handle it. Unlike, say, a very feminine woman who likes men. A very feminine woman who likes men is going to know exactly how to handle a guy who is attracted to her. Either she'll say yay or nay, but in either way, she'll know how to handle the situation. A lesbian, or perhaps a girl who is not yet realized that she's a lesbian, but she's at that stage where she just is repelled by men, she's afraid of men, she is going to be the one who's going to point the finger at you and say sexual assault, sexual harassment, rape, blah, blah, blah. Because ultimately, she doesn't understand men. And this is interesting. You see, both sexes at an intuitive level understand one another. And the screw-ups in the mating dance happens when one side or the other just doesn't understand how the other works. A lot of incels are like that. A lot of incels don't understand how women think. And so they think that, women are stupid or this or that or the other. And they go through a whole litany of things. But what's going on really is that they don't understand women's drives. And because they don't understand women's drives, they don't know how to appeal to a woman, and therefore they don't know how to get a woman. See, that's what's going on with incels. Something similar is happening with femme lesbians. They don't understand men, and yet they are naturally attracting men against their will, practically. And it frightens them even more. And so they freak out, they don't want to be around men, and they find incredible comfort and understanding with being with a butch lesbian because of course, the femme lesbian understands the butch lesbian, because the butch lesbian, for all her masculine approach and demeanor and dress and whatnot, for all that, she's still a woman. Her psychology is still feminine. A femme lesbian understands a butch lesbian, see, in a way that she does not understand a man. And that's why she gravitates to the butch lesbian. And by the same token, the butch lesbian, she wants to be like a man. And she will be attracted to the same qualities that a man will be attracted to in a woman, i.e. femininity, softness, gentleness, warmth, or the promise of warmth. And that will naturally lead the butch lesbian to be attracted to the femme lesbian. And that's how it works. Now, why am I talking about all this stuff? I mean, how does it affect you as a guy? Short answer, it doesn't. It's just an observation. But it's a useful observation. It's a useful observation in the sense that you will now be able to understand lesbians and understand too that if you are trying to get a lesbian into the bed, you're just wasting your time, see? And it exposes you to danger. Because see, a femme lesbian, which is the kind of lesbian that you will naturally be attracted to, she will be afraid of you. She won't really want to be with you. She won't ever truly feel comfortable with you. Any kind of long-term relationship is going to be fraught with insecurities. Fraught with insecurities that you won't be able to handle. It's not that this girl is damaged. It's just her psychological makeup. It's just the way she is. She will never be able to eliminate that fear of men. Eliminate that fear of you. And who wants to be with somebody who's afraid of you all the time? You see the problem? And you see how difficult it is to get a femme lesbian to not fear men? Think of it like this. Think of a person, man or woman, who's afraid of dogs, who's just naturally afraid of dogs and doesn't have any experience with dogs, right? What happens is that as they get older, it becomes more ingrained. And whenever they're around a dog, even if it's a little chihuahua, they freak out. They're scared of the dog. And of course, the dog senses this fear, and this creates tension. It's the exact same thing, see? A femme lesbian is going to be naturally afraid of a man, no matter how well-intentioned. And because she's going to be naturally afraid of a man, that man's hackles are going to be raised up a little bit. He's going to be a little bit tentative. He's going to be a little bit stressed. It's not going to be natural. It's not going to be smooth. And so that kind of relationship is going to be fraught with tension, and tension that is never articulated, because what's going on is that the woman, the femme lesbian, perhaps she doesn't even know that she's a femme lesbian, but in her core, she fears a man, she fears you, and she'll never be able to express it. She'll feel guilty about it. She'll hate herself, perhaps, because she might look at you and say, hey, this is a wonderful guy. He's hardworking, decent, treats me right, all the rest. You could be a saint, Jesus Christ himself, yeah? But that inherent fear that can never go away, that can never be yanked out of her or soothed away, it's always going to be there. It's always going to create tension in the relationship, and you're just never going to feel at peace. Years ago, I dated a very, very attractive woman that I was crazy about. I mean, I was really nuts about her. But whenever I was around her, she was tense. She was stressed. I could feel it. There was never a moment of being relaxed. Even when we had sex, even after, I'd shown her that I was like a good guy and all the rest of it, there was always this tension within her. And it was just really uncomfortable to the point that I thought to myself, I don't really want to be with this woman because I'm stressed out. I'm unhappy. I'm unhappy around her. I don't feel at peace, relaxed. I can't feel jovial because she's so stressed. There was this nucleus in her that was stressed. A few years later, time passes, we'd long broken up, and I hear that she is sort of like gone lesbian, right? I was kind of surprised. It was like she'd gone through a couple of boyfriends before she'd gone lesbian, so it wasn't my fault, yeah? But she'd gone lesbian, and later I found out, and tragically, and something she never told me, that she had been abused by her stepfather. I found out about it. It's not important for this story. But the point is, it was a fact. It was an established fact that her stepfather had abused her. In fact, she testified at his trial. Oh yeah, it went that far, okay? It was really ugly shit. And then I realized, of course, why she feared me, why she was never at peace when we were together. Because she had that fear, the product of her sexual abuse at the hands of her stepfather. I mean, a real tragic situation, but you see what was going on. Last I heard, this woman is in her early mid-40s, and she's a happy lesbian, gorgeous, unbelievably attractive, but totally lesbian, and living with her partner who's kind of butch. Yeah, and that's the way it is. And you see, a lot of times where this fear is coming from, insofar as butch women are concerned, a lot of times their desire to be more masculine comes from also family dynamics. Not necessarily always. But a lot of times. A lot of times, this girl who becomes a lesbian, a butch lesbian, she was born a girl and her daddy wanted a boy, that kind of situation. But a lot of times it's just the way they are. A lot of times some girl is born with just more testosterone or whatever. It doesn't really matter, okay? But the femme lesbians, because I'm emphasizing them because they're the ones that you're going to be attracted to as a guy. The femme lesbians, you got to watch out for. You always got to be watching out for them because at the heart of their dynamic with a man is fear, and that's important. You never want to be with a person who's afraid of you. You never want to be with a woman who is afraid of you personally or you because you are a man. Because it'll be a tense relationship and an unhappy relationship for both of you. Learn to spot that. Learn to spot it early on. You don't want to be with somebody who's afraid of you. You don't want to be with somebody who is afraid of men. Lesbians, I personally, I feel sorry for them. I have no ill will to any of them. Like I said, I've met plenty of lesbians and they were nice to me. I had a fine time with them, but fundamentally I feel sorry for them for the same reason I feel sorry for homosexual men. Because ultimately they are people who are defective. Like a person who can't walk or perhaps can't see or can't hear or something like that. It's a handicap, it's a disability. They're not enjoying life to the fullest, okay? And it's important that you pay attention to them and understand where they're coming from. They're not bad people. They're just broken. Thank you so much for supporting me on Patreon. Now it's the first of the month tomorrow, as a matter of fact. I hope you'll sign up again and join me. If you are a $5 member, remember, you get a video every week, every Wednesday, that you'll find nowhere else. And if you go for the $10 level, you get the video every week, and also you get the weekly webinar. Weekly webinar where I talk about different stuff for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours sometimes, with Q&A and the possibility of commenting. So please join if you're interested. Thank you so much for your support, and I will catch you next time.